Welcome to another episode of my podcast That's Fine With Me. Today we're going to be talking about nostalgia, and I'm not going to talk about my nostalgia. I'm going to just start with the word. Where did it come from? Who invented this word? Or it was just a kind of disease? Is it a disease? Is it a condition? Is it like, what is this? And I was wondering, and I just want to tell you where I'm coming from. I was watching a lot of different videos, especially for TikTok and social media in general. And I'm into astrology and I'm into so many things. And a lot of astrologers are saying like it's going to be a huge shift in society in 2026 because there are going to be a lot of air and fire. That is the main reason why we are going to see a huge shift. And actually, it's really interesting because like you actually can see this right now through the lens of people who are saying, I'm so tired of this influencer era. I'm so tired of these influencers. And I'm like, I wish I was called an influencer because it's or maybe not. I guess it's shameful right now to be called an influencer in the way and in the sense. I was gonna say that probably I'm more like a YouTuber or maybe a TikToker sometimes, but it's not about the point where I just want to make sure that, people love me for the sake of loving me and whatever. I just want to share some really cool content. I want to share some videos. And finally, I can see that people are so tired and they're so fed up of this clean girl aesthetics, of shoving all the products, makeup products in your faces. And I'm down to the fact that people are nostalgic about 2016. Maybe it actually started with Kylie Kin, or probably it just started way before that. And she was kind of showing this nostalgic feeling and probably getting the general idea what society needs right now. Because while I'm thinking about nostalgia, I think about different kind of things. It's not only about makeup. It's not about King Kylie, though I don't remember King Kylie in 2016. I just remember her Kylie cosmetics and I remember her kits, like lip kits. But I don't really remember about nostalgia in general. So let's get started. Because the first ever, I guess, person who came up with this idea or disease, let's call it this way. At first, it was suggested to be a disease. There was a medical student whose name or his surname was Hoffer, and he was studying a lot of soldiers or mercenaries who had weird condition. Some of them were sick, had some stomach ache, some of them were nauseous, some of them had weird headache, and the only thing they were talking about the way that they just wanted to go back home, and they were coming from Swiss. That is the main reason why they wanted to come back home. And the timing was late, I guess, 17th century. And this medical student, Huffer, he came up with this idea that probably it might be called nostalgia, because a lot of medical students, they actually learn Latin and Greek, or at least back in the day, they knew kind of like Greek words. So he came up with this really nice word, nostalgia, where it was made out of two words, Greek words. The first one is nestus, nostos. Nostos was a Greek word for homecoming, and algas, it was a pain or longing. And he combined both of these words and was like homesick. But then they kind of started noticing that a lot of people from different regions, if they were immigrants or if they're coming from a little bit different area, they had or possessed same symptoms of nostalgia. They really wanted to come back home and they missed their culture, they missed their food, they missed a lot of it, where like the place where they grew up, their friends, family. Later, it was divided into a little bit different meaning because I guess early 20th century, people realized that it was not always about homesick or homesickness. It was more about general missing of the past, or probably like the positive thing that happened to you in the past. And more often it was coming from the place where people felt sad or depressed. And it was kind of considered as being kind of a depression. And it wasn't a disease anymore, because when it was first discovered in the late 17th century, people thought, because all the soldiers, they had the symptoms of like real aches and headaches, stomach aches, whatsoever. So that was considered to be a disease. But it was just the connection between the brain and the fact that we were missing something so much that it was actually affecting the body. And that is the main reason why later it actually went from a very negative to a little bit more positive way. From considering this to be a neurological disease, it transferred into a category of mental condition. Mental condition is not always bad. It's just the way people process their feelings and the way people process situation in general. Another really cool, I guess, fact about nostalgia is that it's most of the time is forming later in life when you're aging, where you're becoming a little bit older. And when you're a kid, most of the time you're not going to have any nostalgia, because like, what to be nostalgic about? You live your life, you enjoy your life, you have friends, you have school, of course some negative emotions, you kind of cry them out. That is the reason why you don't really have any issue with nostalgia, because you don't really have it for now. And later we start forming as adults. When I was a 15-year-old, I started my journey through being into makeup. I was developing my music preferences. I started dating my first ever boyfriend. Right now he's my husband. I remember that I went to college. I was studying a lot of different things, and then I went to university. And you can tell that from about 14 or 15 to maybe 30-year-old, you're forming a lot of hobbies, you're forming a lot of things in your life, and that is the reason why here comes some excitement. Though I'm going to be honest that when I was maybe 20 or 25, I still had some periods of nostalgia of being a kid, or just like having fun with my friends, or not caring about certain things. And I was nostalgic. Later it kind of transferred into this idea that nostalgia is really good. It's not that bad. It's a coping mechanism that is really helping us a lot in ways where we're struggling and we're not only depressed but a little bit down and sad. And that is the main reason why you just have to keep this in mind. Nostalgia is a good thing in order to prevent, I guess, sadness. But at the same time, nostalgia is always associated with something positive from your past. And it can be a little bit dangerous sometimes because, like, for example, growing up, you knew that you lived in some small apartment. This is just a quick, small kind of like example. So you lived in a really tiny and small apartment, and you get married. You get married, you started your first, I guess, journey as a married couple, and you were talking. First, you were dating, and it had a lot of passion and sex and talking, and everything was crazy good. Though you didn't really have a lot of money, probably you lived in dorms. It just depended on guys. And then time passed by, and you earn a lot of money. For example, you earn a lot of money, you live in a mansion, you live in a really big and spacious apartment, and you have really bad relationship with your husband, or you kind of got divorced. And that is the way for you to cope with the sad feelings that this era is over. You're not young anymore, probably, like if you've been in this marriage for like 20 or 30 years, for example, and then you know that the 20 years they have flown by, and that is the main reason why you are alone right now, or you're not even alone, but you're kind of still in this relationship and you're not talking, and you're like, back in the day, we were so happy living in this tiny apartment, having no money, but we were happy. And now look at us. We have all of it, but we're not happy. The problem about that is most of the time people, they're not thinking about nostalgia in a way that probably 20 years later, if you still were in this apartment and still were struggling with money, the probability that you would get through divorce even sooner is a little bit more higher than when you have a lot of money and you're still together. This is a core problem that sometimes we just try to pick on positive things from nostalgia, not thinking about that there were still shitty apartments, still a problem with money, and still lots of details that is the reason why you don't really actually want to go back to this past. But this is only the way to process your feelings. Another really cool example, in my opinion, is when we're talking about music preferences. My husband and I, we do actually share music preferences, and I would say that a lot of his music tracks, they're relatable to me and I really like them. Not all of them. Let's just, like, let's be fair, not all of them. My husband is not a huge fan of like pop music. Most of the time that's something that I listen from time to time, and I guess we really love like Papa Roach. I love Papa Roach because some of their songs. I love Linkin Park. I love so who do Fall Out Boys, some songs of 21 Pilots. It's just added to that. There's so much more. And I would say System of a Down, AC/DC, some of AC/DC, some songs from Metallica. And my husband loves them too. Not every single song, but some of them. And then when we're talking, when there's like a song playing, I know that we can discuss something like, oh, I remember I really loved the song because when I was going from one place to another, and like I was sitting in a bus, and Linkin Park, the song Numb, when it was playing all the time, I felt sadness, and it felt that I really liked one guy who turned out to be my husband right now, and he wasn't responding back, and I was like really sad. And every single time I was listening to the song, it brought those feelings and emotions that I was really, really sad, and this guy wasn't answering me, like this guy, my husband guy. And same happened to my husband. And was like, what was the song? And he was like, this is so cool. I remember this was the first time that I invited a girl over dance. Or some people, they actually are pretty nostalgic about their first song and they had sex during like listening to the song. And that is interesting because you do actually have different memories, especially if we're talking about foods. Do you remember the ratatouille, the rat who lived in Paris? And I remember that from the movie, the critic that was kind of like judging everyone and their food in restaurants, this rat actually knew what this critic needed. And when he cooked the ratatouille, it was so nostalgic to the critic that he was willing to wait for the secret to be released. And that is the main reason why I really loved the kind of like basic of this cartoon. But you're probably going to be right when you're going to see a lot of PR managers, they kind of know at least now that nostalgia sells. At least I guess everyone is going through this phase. I mean, we can see I started my podcast with influencers. I started with very lavish lifestyle. And that is the main reason why I just want to bring this up, because people are so sick and tired of wealth that is shown in their faces, and the economy is shitty. I mean, probably maybe 10 years ago in 2016, when everything was at a rise and you could probably afford a lot of makeup products. Right now, I see comments from people saying, I can relate only to drugstore products and I can afford only drugstore products. In maybe 2016 or 2018, I could easily go to a Sephora store and buy a lot of different makeup to play around. And right now, I can afford only drugstore because the economy is crazy. And that is the main reason why, I guess, in 2026, and again, I started with like astrology and whatever, a lot of the times people are referring to 2026 as 2016. And they're like, oh, we're going back to this era. And Nikki Tutorial, she was like super into this. Like, I never gave up an idea of makeup tutorials and crazy makeup. And that is the main reason why I always loved Nikki. And you can actually check out my YouTube channel or my shorts, and you can tell that I actually love a lot of colorful makeup looks, and I always loved them. Clean girl aesthetics, clean girl era was so painful to me because I don't really know what you can show 4 times a week creating clean girl aesthetics. I mean, I'm more than okay watching from 1 to maybe 5 or 10 tutorials how to do like clean girl aesthetics, but what else? What else? It's just getting really bored. But when you see a lot of people doing crazy and bright, colorful makeup looks, you're like, yeah, that's what I want to see. That's what I want to recreate. That's something that I want to be creative about. That is what I'm talking about, this girls and boys. I'm sorry, guys. I just like, that's what I'm talking about here, guys. That nostalgia is the way to get something positive from, again, 2016, because 2016 wasn't that good. We still had some problems with social media. Social media it was at a rise, but still, like, apps weren't working that way. We didn't have much of access. I had shitty phones, so I didn't have any internet connection. That was the main reason why I just couldn't watch these videos from my phone, from different kind of like platforms. I had to log in computer most of the time and watch this from my computer. A whole other story. But we're kind of remember only really nice, positive things. It's like bright and colorful makeup. And people, they are waiting for this. They're like literally, they need makeup, at least in my opinion. And I'm so happy about that if it's really the case here. And that is the reason that the economy is so shitty that people are going to the times when it wasn't that shitty. And what was that? 2016, more or less, I would say. And then like, okay, so we could afford a lot of things in 2016, so we could play with makeup. And I'm like, oh, let's bring this back. And again, I was talking all over the place, guys, today. I'm like all over the place because I'm super excited and hyped on this topic. And the reason why I'm saying this is PR kind of like managers right now, they know that nostalgia is selling because they try their foot in a couple of areas like music. Can you see that a lot of singers, they're coming back? Is like Kylie Minogue, and who else? Like Katy Perry, Lady Gaga was never the case. But I guess a lot of other singers that were really popular early 2000s, they're coming back because like nostalgia is selling. Again, a lot of the films such as Freaky Friday, The Mummy. The Mummy was my favorite film of 90s, and I could watch it every single day, 2 or 3 times. I'm serious. I just went to the point when I was probably like 10 years old, maybe 10 or something like this, where I could, I knew all the lines from the movie. I don't remember all the lines right now, but still, that was my favorite. That is the main reason why when Brendan Fraser, he was given an interview and saying that they're going to be the 3rd movie, the 4th one, but the 3rd that I guess related to Egypt, and that's what he was waiting for so long. And he mentioned that the 3rd part, The Mummy in China, that was basically because of the Olympic Games, but it was never the intention to create something in China. They were always wanted to focus on, I would say, Egypt, and this is actually the Egyptian theme, and I really love Egyptian mummies. That was the main reason why I didn't really like the 3rd mummy, because it was just not the case for me. I just loved ancient Egypt, and that was really important to me. And that is the reason why I'm so excited to see part 4 with probably, if it's going to be about Egypt, I'm down, like really down. And with the Freaky Friday 2nd part, like 2nd movie, I would say they did a great job. It was so funny, it was so witty. I love that they brought the same characters, the same actors were like performing, and we didn't have any weird agenda. So that is the main reason why I think it's going to work out for probably a lot of people right now that are looking a comeback of 2016 and they're expecting this in 2026. I don't really think we need a lot of information about nostalgia because you pretty much know what it is, but it's always about positive things, though it was not always about positive things. If you ask me, I grew up in a district in Moscow, and I I really loved. I had a lot of friends there, and I still have a friend living there. And my husband, he grew up in the same place, in the same area. Actually, we were kind of like neighbors. And when we moved out from this district and we had to live in a little bit different apartment, it was just the opposite position where we grew up. When we came back, I was nostalgic. I was like, oh my God, I remember this playground. I remember going out with my friends in this cafe. I remember we went to the cinema. But at the same time, when we were talking and discussing this type of thing, my husband was like, yeah, I remember walking around this area. I'm like, do you really want to go back? Do you really want to come back and just find an apartment in this area? And he was like, I don't really know. I don't really think so. I love that idea that we grew up here, but I'm not really sure we want to come back and live in this area because we found a little bit more convenient place for us. Not even place, but just the area that we want to live in. And that is the main reason why we're kind of like working in this, toward this, I guess, goals. That is the main reason why we're evolving, we're growing. There's still going to be a lot of things when you're aging. Of course, you want to believe that some time ago you were young, you were beautiful, and you had some partners, romantic partners, and especially it is relatable to an older generation, someone who lost their spouse due to some age or even other problems. Of course, they're going to go to this happy times in their marriages over and over again because they know that it was really good for them. And my point here is that from, I guess, 15 to 30, as we discussed this earlier, we were becoming adults and we had so much excitement in life. And when we're like adults from 30 to, I guess, and going further from this age number, some of us, we don't really have the luxury to spend that much time on developing hobbies because you have some duties, you have work, you have a lot of plans. Sometimes you're just tired and you want to stay home and it gets a little bit boring. That is the reason why you have this nostalgia about the time where you had all this interest in adventurous opportunities and where you were developing your kind of like sense of style and whatever. And it's really cool, but that's tricky situation that not everything was that great about that time. It's cool to get this anxiety, I would say, even anxiety off your shoulders, but it's still not okay to live in the past and think that everything was so much better in the past, because like where you are right now is still valid and it brought by your choices in life. And even if you had some mistakes, I'm pretty much sure that it's not going to be that harmful to consider that every single person has their own journey and we're here for the reason. Love you all so much. And I'm going to see you in my next podcast. That's fine with me. Bye bye.